Alright, so let's get started here. We're doing a review of how to simplify, multiply, and divide rational expressions. Starting with factoring. We kind of did the first one together, so this should be an easy one, but let's have Brian Martinez. Will you explain how you did that? How would we factor x squared plus 7x plus 6? Uh-huh. How did you figure out what numbers go in here? We're saying the two numbers, what do they need to do? They need to... Uh-huh. And what numbers multiply to 6 and add to 7? 6 and 1. Okay, so then we just put those in here, x plus 6, x plus 1. Good. You need to know how to do factoring to be successful in this unit, okay? So good job there, Brian. Let's now go to this next one, which we're going to send to Emily Bauer. How would you factor m squared plus 2m minus 48?
You would put the 2m in parentheses.
Okay.
And then do the 2 and 48 on the x.
Yeah, they need to multiply to 48, negative 48, and add to 2. So were you able to come up with two numbers that multiply to negative 48 and add to 2? 48 does have a lot of numbers. Let's break it down. So 48 and 1. But we're looking for ones that are only 2 away from each other. So not that. 2 and 24, no. 4 and 12, no. What's one more, guys? 6 and 8. Hey, those are only 2 away. That's going to be our numbers. But the question is, which one is going to be positive here, the 6 or the 8? Because they multiply to a negative, so one's positive, one's negative. Which one's the negative? 6, because then it adds to a positive 2. So I just put in the minus 6 and the plus 2 like that. Or, sorry, plus 8. How could I check my work here, guys? Just multiply it out, right? Lobster claw it, and we're good. Okay, so that's what we do with just factoring. It was important that we knew how to factor. Do you have any questions on one or two? Alright, then let's go to this next one. We're going to simplify. Another word of simplifying is just reducing. Okay? What is the biggest number that can go into 20 that can also go into 36? What did you guys come up with? What did you say? Yeah, 4, right? 4. So 36 is 4 times 9. And x cubed is just 3x's, right? So I'm going to write that out. 20 is 4 times 5, and then there's just 1x. Now, if it's the same top and bottom, we can cross it off because it will simplify to 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. X divided by x is 1. So what's left over, I have a 9 and 2 x's. And then we also have, in the bottom, a 5. Bless you. Alright, now in our instructions, it does say to simplify, but state the excluded values. One of the rules is that we can never divide by 0. You never want 0 in the bottom. Let's actually demonstrate this. Who has an iPhone? Is that an iPhone? Do you have Siri? Who has Siri on an iPhone? Will you ask Siri, turn your volume up really loud, and ask Siri, what is 0 divided by 0? And let's all listen.
Hey Siri, what's 0 divided by 0?
Imagine that you have 0 cookies, and you split them evenly among 0 friends. How many cookies does each person get? See, it doesn't make sense. And Cookie Monster is sad that there are no cookies. And your friends are sad because they don't exist. Oh wow, this escalated quickly.
Alright, thanks Siri. So the point is, dividing by 0 doesn't make sense. It actually makes it undefined. So we never want to divide by 0. So when we're looking at these problems, we need to make sure we say, hey, what value of x would make me get 0 in the bottom? And since x is just timesing, it would be 0. So I'm going to put a little note here. X cannot be 0. Okay? X cannot be 0. Because what would happen if I plug in 0? I get 0 divided by 0, and as Siri just said, doesn't make sense. We can't do that. Alright, cool. Let's go to 4, and let's look at the top and the bottom. So I'm going to call on two people here. One to factor the numerator, one to factor the denominator. Oscar, will you tell me how you factored the numerator? And then let's go to the bottom now. I'm going to ask Emma how she got the bottom. Oscar, so you've got m squared minus m minus 30. How did you factor that? Were you able to get that factored? Well, let's make your x here. What numbers multiply to 30, and we need them to add to negative 1? So what are some numbers that multiply to 30, Oscar? 10 and 3. Are those only one away from each other? No. So that's good, but not that one. It's also not 30 and 1. What other numbers? Can you think of any other ones? Someone help us out. There's one more. Go ahead, Braylon.
3 and 5.
Not 3 and 5. That'd be 15. 6 and 5. There we go. So there we go. So our numbers are going to be 6 and 5. Except which one is going to be negative? Because they multiply to a negative 30, add to a negative 1. The 6 is negative. Because look, negative 6. I don't know what I just did there. Sorry about that. Negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1. So that means the numerator is going to factor to be m minus 6 and m plus 5. Emma, how did you factor the denominator?
Put the 2 m's in parentheses, and the first one is -3 and -6, because you do 18 times 5 to get 18, and plus 10 and
Negative 9. So this is interesting because they have to multiply to a positive and add to a negative, which means they're both negative. So Emma said it was negative 6 and negative 3. Let's check that. Negative 6 times negative 3 is positive 18. Negative 6 minus 3 is negative 9. Good job. Okay, now we're not done on this one because we're going to look and see what can I cross out. So Emma, what's the same here? So I'm going to just put a little note here. And I kind of ran out of room, but the answer is going to be m plus 5 over m minus 3. Alright, so there we go. That's how you'd simplify. Now I still need to state the excluded values. The excluded values make you divide by 0. So when I'm looking right here, I have m minus 3. What number, if I subtract 3 from it, gives me 0? 3, right? So if I let n be 3, it would be 3 minus 3. I'd get 0 in the bottom. We don't want that. So I'm going to put a little note here that m cannot be 3. So this symbol means cannot equal. So we've seen an equal sign a lot. This means it cannot equal. Now, even though we crossed out the m minus 6, we still need to make sure we exclude that value too. What number, if I take away 6 from it, gives me 0 in the bottom? So I'm going to say m also cannot be 6. So I'm going to put m can't be 3 or 6. So that was a big part of the simplifying lesson, was stating your excluded values, because you don't want to divide by 0. Okay, cool. So that's halfway through the battle. We've just factored and simplified. Do you have any questions on that so far? Okay, we're going to go over multiplying and dividing. Now, when you're multiplying, you multiply straight across. The numerator goes to the numerator, the denominator goes to the denominator. So, what I like to do is I just draw a new line here, like that. And I think of it as just one big fraction. And anything that's factored out that's the same top and bottom, I can cross it out. So guys, looking at that, what's the same top and bottom? X plus 10. What's x plus 10 divided by x plus 10? Well, what's anything divided by itself? 1, so I'm just going to cross it out. Now, something that's a little tricky here is x minus 2 and negative x plus 2, are those the same? They're not, but actually those are what we're going to call opposites, okay? Let's look at this. So if I look at x minus 2 and negative x plus 2. Do you see how the signs are different? Here the x is positive, here the x is negative. 2 is negative, 2 is positive. What would happen if I factored out a negative? So I'm dividing these by a negative. Well, that would turn the negative to a positive and the positive to the negative. So now, are they the same? Yes. So if we look at this, x minus 2, and if I change this to be negative x minus 2, I can cross them out, but what's left over? The negative. So here's the trick on number 5. I can actually cross out the x minus 2 and the negative x plus 2, but I have to leave a negative. And I always put the negative in the numerator. So on this one, what's left over? Well, in the numerator we have the negative and then an x minus 8. And in the denominator we just had an x minus 10. And that's going to be your answer. When you multiply, you go straight across. And if anything's the same, you can cross it out. What if it's opposite? Still cross it out, but what's left? A negative. All right. Okay, we're going to go to number 6. Number 6 is a little trickier because we are not, it's not already factored. We have to go through and factor this whole thing. So here's what I'm going to do. I want these two rows right here. You guys, I want you to put your brains together and factor x squared minus 81. This middle row right here, I want you to factor 10x plus 90. Okay, put your brains together. You two rows right here, put your brains together. I want you to factor x squared minus 7x minus 18. So if you know how to factor, great, do it. If you don't, ask for help, but you got 30 seconds now. I want you to try to factor that. Go. First group, x squared minus 81. Were you able to factor that? Then think what you put. Over you. Good job. Isaac got it. What numbers multiply to negative 81 and add to 0? Notice there's no middle term here. That means it's 0. And Isaac, what did you say it was?
X minus 9 and x plus 9.
Nice job. So x squared minus 81, this is a difference of squares. Square root of 81 is 9, so we get x plus 9, x minus 9. And look, right next to it, we have another x minus 9. Remember, when you multiply, it just goes straight across, so it makes it one big fraction. That dot means multiply, make it one big fraction. Hey, middle row, how did you factor 10x plus 90? What can you do there?
I didn't figure it out, but I know that 9 can multiply to get 90 when you times it by 10, and then 18 times 5, but I don't know how to add that.
Nice job. So yeah, so right here for the 10x plus 90, you're just taking out the greatest common factor, which you said 90 is 10 times 9, and you have a 10 there, so they both have a 10, right? So we're just going to take out that 10, and that's x plus 9. And there you go. That's all you had to do, so good job. Hey, two rows right here. Who factored x squared minus 7x minus 18? Negative 9 and 2. They multiply to negative 18, add to negative 7, and yep, you're right. So good job. We put our brains together. We had to factor 3 times. We had a difference of square, greatest common factor, and then just plain old quadratic trinomial factoring. And here we go. Now the fun part is we get to cross things out. So let's go to Maddie. Tell me what I can cross out here.
The x plus 9.
one on top. Anything else?
The x minus 9.
And there you go. So what's left over? There's an x minus 9 in the numerator, a 10, and an x plus 2. And that's your final answer. So that's how you multiply. You go straight across. If it's factored, then you don't have, you just cross it off at the same top and bottom. If it's not factored, well then you factor, and then you cross it out, if it's the same top and bottom. Okay, last one on here was dividing. Dividing is kind of a tricky thing. Let me actually go backwards a little bit here, okay? Let me see if this will work. I remember one time I was watching, when I was like observing some different teachers, there was some 6th graders, and they did this math problem. They did 2/3 divided by 4/5, or something like this. They had a fraction divided by a fraction. And that scares some people when they see that. But do any of you remember how to do that? There's a way we can rewrite this. Go ahead, Jade.
So like number, so the 2, so you keep 2 over 3.
Uh-huh.
And you switch the division to multiplication. And then instead of 4 over 5, it's 5 over 4. So you switch it.
Nice. And that was 3 words, right? Keep, change, oh, this isn't writing very well, and flip. Wow, that's why I don't use this board. Look at that. How many of you guys have heard keep, change, flip before? Just a couple. The rest of you, was it multiplied by the reciprocal, or how did you learn it? All right. But the idea is, if you have a fraction divided by a fraction, we keep, change it from division to multiply, and then flip it over. This is the same idea as multiplied by the reciprocal. And then I would just go and say, okay, that's going to be 10, 2 times 5 is 10, 3 times 4 is 12, and then we reduce that to 5 over 6. This is not working very well, but that's all right. The idea is keep, change, flip. Now, we're going to do that same thing, maybe. This is garbage. All right. But we're going to do it with these ones. Maybe works better if I can see. Ah, there we go. Okay, so first off, is there anything I can do to simplify this right now? What could I do?
7k plus 3.
What's 7k plus 3 divided by 7k plus 3? It's 1, so I could just get rid of that. Jade, will you tell me how to write this using keep, change, flip?
So you keep the 8 started with 3, and then multiply, and then you put 9k up, and then 8k squared at the bottom. And then
So I'm going to put just a note here that that was keep, change, flip. Okay, keep going.
and then you can the 8k squared equals, you can divide both. Well, yeah, both.
So it's 9k over 3. Good.
And you can simplify it, so 3 goes into both of those, so we get 3k.
9 divided by 3 is 3, so it's just 3k. Awesome job. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with divide. Keep, change, flip. This one was nice because it was always factored. The next one's not factored, so what are we going to do? We're going to factor first, and then we're going to keep, change, flip. Alright, so what I want you guys to do is we're going to do that same thing that I did before. You 2 rows, you're going to take n squared minus 5n minus 50. You have the top one. Middle row, you've got the bottom one here. These other 2 rows, you've got this bottom one. Everyone know which one they're factoring? Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds. See if you can factor. So this is the first 2, middle, far 2. Alright, so first two rows, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 50 and add to negative 5. What did you say they were? Anybody?
9 plus 5.
A positive 5 and?
10 minus
Thanks, Isaac. That's the first one. Okay, middle row. Did you guys come up with one what multiplies to negative 40 and adds to negative 3? What did you say, Maddie?
I did -8 and then +5.
Good job, that is correct. Not much we can do with 4n squared, but last two rows, what did you get with n squared minus 6n minus 16? What multiplies to negative 16 but adds to negative 6? Negative 8 and 2 multiplies to negative 16, adds to negative 6. Nice job. So step 1, we factor. But what if you don't know how to factor? Well, then you better learn how to, because it's a major part. Hey, before I keep, change, flip, is there anything I can cross out? Yep, it's gone. Now we're going to do the keep, change, flip. Embryona, can you tell us how we would keep, change, flip for this one? We're going to keep the n minus 10 and the n minus 8. So we're just keeping that the same. But we're going to change it from division, any guesses, to multiplying. So it's just a dot. And then the last one, keep, change, flip. Just flip it over. So now I've got n minus 8 and n plus 2. And at the bottom we have 4n squared. That's how we keep, change, flip. So guys, what can I cross out now? So then I'm left with n minus 10, n plus 2, and lastly